As dark skies form on the horizon and dangerous storms seem ready to strike, there is a former cultural icon that has returned. Somebody who you guys, in rather large numbers in fact, have asked me to review, and it's time for me to do so. This is somebody that here in America has caught the eye of many, many groups as exactly what this album is called, a born villain. And in many ways he's able to portray this without doing a single thing, just by releasing music and by creating a concert experience that is ripe with imagery that really goes against the conventional mainstream, at least in these people's opinions. Marilyn Manson's new album here in 2012 finds him without a record label. Interscope Records had recently ended their partnership, so he opted to do this a little bit more as a DIY sort of independent approach, which is kind of cool. It's cool because it gives him a little bit more of an artist's freedom, something that is so important to somebody who is going to be creative. Sometimes whenever you have that major label struggle, it can become very tiresome, bog you down, and they can try to control exactly what you create. Now, obviously Manson didn't have a lot of those problems, as he was able to still sculpt some of the most controversial albums of the most recent 20 years, including the triptych that involved Hollywood, Mechanical Animals, and Antichrist Superstar. And I mention those in reverse order because that's the way in which they're supposed to be played. Now, with Born Villain, we have an album that is ripe with that DIY approach, so there's going to be a lot more of a personal edge to it, and it's something that does cause Manson's music to regain a bit of its trademark sinisterism to it. There's a lot of haunting feel to it. There's a glow to it that really reminisces you back to the albums that kind of either sucked you into the Manson philosophy, either that or it scared you to death. It all depends on what stage of your life you were in or who you are. This is a figure, this man is a figure, this band is a figure that's always kind of had a very polarizing opinion cast upon it by fans and, of course, non-fans. So there's always been a great amount of hate or love for this gentleman and his group, especially during the aftermath of the Columbine school shootings here in America. With this particular album, in spite of the personal edge, there certainly is a certain heaviness to it that sometimes on some Manson releases post-Antichrist Superstar felt a little bit absent. It's kind of like he was wavering between this industrial metal approach that kind of gave him his fame and something that resembled a little bit more in the way of shock/glam rock. And there's just some, there's more of a post-punk feel to this album, something that you would hear from bands such as Joy Division, and it's done, of course, in a more modern feel. It's done, of course, with a little bit more of an industrial, a little bit darker, a little bit more sinister approach. However, the core concept harkens back to bands from this era that have that were waving the post-punk banner, wild and true, and of course, classic music aficionados will go back to bands such as that in order to really classify the post-punk umbrella, and it's a fitting metaphor. So for that reason, this album is certainly going to appeal to a lot of people that have that similar taste. Now, as for the positives is that since this is darkly moody, it also has a certain amount of personal nature to it. There's a lot of good hooks that really perpetuate the mood and really accent it very nicely. There is the presence of the haunting elements that are done in a very large form, here on this album. I mean, there's a real stress on the atmosphere during many verses, during many moments on this album, where that seems to be the point that's attempting to be driven home on a more constant basis than just trying to rock as hard as humanly possible. Now, with that said, there's also the downside that at certain points in the midpoint of this album, it seems and it feels like it lulls a little bit, and the creativity, the dynamisty, the overall scope of the album tends to become a little bit tattered. It tends to become a little bit singular in some locations, while lyrically still pertaining to an overall concept and staying very strict to the theme. It just seems like musically it doesn't tend to take enough risks in order to really capture your attention throughout. Almost like you could easily skip sections of the story and musically you would be a lot more happy, but as far as the story is concerned overall, you might be a little bit disappointed. It's not an album where it's easy to get lost in. It's an album that sometimes surprises you when it needs to. However, it doesn't overall give you the jolt to your system that perhaps you were expecting with the incarnation of a new Manson album. Now, that's not to say that this new Marilyn Manson album, Born Villain, is not a good piece of music. This is in fact just to say that it's a nice jolt to the system. The approach is certainly a fresh take. However, it may not be all in which it is kind of dawned and cracked up to be. There's a lot of positives on this record. The latter portion of this record, the last 2 or 3 tracks to be specific, really drive this record out on a really high note and really kind of accents what this record could have been had the entire scope of it really reached those creative heights. There's a lot of great aspects on this on the latter part of this record that includes toning it down a little bit, kind of ballading it a little bit with the very last track on the record. I mean, there's the diversity lies within those last tracks, and the remainder of the album could have been grand. There's also a cover on this album of You're So Vain, of course the Carly Simon track that's recorded with Marilyn Manson and Johnny Depp, which is kind of cool for me because I'm a huge Depp fan. So that's an interesting interpretation. You can't really hear Johnny very much. He's supplying mainly background vocals and things like that, but it's a cool little add-on. So overall, where do I feel about this album? I kind of give it more of like a 7. It's something where it's a neat little experience. It's something where if you thought Marilyn Manson was dead, this is his way of saying, fuck you, no, I'm not, here I am. There's a bit of a reach of diversity on it, but it's just not something that captures your attention enough to keep you inclined to listen on a very constant basis. I think that this will be another one of his albums where people will remember certain tracks during their listening experience, but probably not the scope of the whole. So that's how I feel about that. Hopefully you guys are happy that I was able to actually cover this, and instead of just letting it kind of flow by the wayside. And I apologize for this being about a week tardy, but I was struggling with the decision of whether or not I wanted to even touch this one. So I'll talk to you guys next time with the next album review. This will probably be the only time you'll ever see me in this Marilyn Manson shirt, as it was a gift and kind of stinks. So yeah, ew. Bye.